Hey everybody, what is up? Welcome back to Final Trade. I had promised you a longer form video about my thoughts on Metazoo coming back from the dead. And of course, Charlie Herlocker is a gentleman who seems to be at the head of that, of a company that has been assembled with apparently a decent bit of capital in order to buy the IP rights, buy the old inventory, and a lot of other things, and try and bring the game back. And of course, I had told you a couple days ago that there's a channel on YouTube called Nick's Strength and Pokemon. Nick has done a very good job over the last 10 months of following the bankruptcy proceedings of Metazoo, the original Metazoo, and the attempts by various bidders to buy out parts or all of the assets that the company had left. And so Nick got an interview with Charlie Herlocker about a week ago now, and they talked for about 2 hours. It was a very, very good and interesting conversation. And I definitely liked Charlie Herlocker. I think he was really interesting, and he definitely has a passion for TCGs and for Metazoo, the whole cryptids theme, things like that. So I'm going to give you my take on where I see Metazoo going. And, you know, this is a degenerate TCG investing channel, and so of course it's going to be mostly focused on that. And I will tell you my history with Metazoo is I spent absolutely $0 on Metazoo ever. So I had no exposure to it. And so when the company went bankrupt, the game died, and the assets crashed, I lost nothing. And, you know, I look at the early stages of speculative games as a lot like venture capital, where, yes, you might get huge returns. I mean, there are people who made, 100x returns on their Welcome to Wraith first edition boxes. But most of the time, you're going to lose everything. And, you know, in the TCG world, it often doesn't go to zero, but it goes considerably below what you cost it for. And in some cases, it can go down enough that you have to pay additional money to get out from under it, depending on where you're selling it. So I don't like speculating in early stage games. That's what kept me away from Lorcana, kept me away from One Piece, and both of those turned out to be really good calls to stay away from. And I'm going to stay away from Metazoo. There are a couple of big problems that I think Metazoo is going to face. And I'm not saying that Charlie and his team can't overcome them. I'm not saying they don't have a plan to overcome them. But these are the big problems that I see are going to create a lot of friction. And the first one is Metazoo is not a fun game. And I know there will be somebody watching this who really loves the gameplay, who really enjoys it. And that's fine. But understand you are in a very, very narrow minority. Most people did not care for the gameplay of Metazoo. There were very, very vanishingly few channels on YouTube making Metazoo gameplay videos. And so one thing that was not addressed in the Charlie Herlocker interview was, are they going to fix the gameplay? So they're stuck between a rock and a hard place on this issue. They can fix the gameplay. Now, if they fix the gameplay, game design is very, very hard. You know, amongst all the mountains you have to climb to make a TCG company work, you have to design a good game. And game design is very, very hard. So they would have to fix the gameplay. Now, does that mean modifying the existing rule set? Does it mean scrapping it and coming with something completely new? I don't believe Charlie went into detail about that. I don't think he did. So I don't know what he's going to do. Correct me in the comments if he commented on it and I just missed it. But if they're going to go the route of changing, altering, completely overhauling the rules, they will have to get it right. And they might not. And history says the overwhelming odds are that they won't get it right. Most TCGs aren't fun. Most of them fail. Most board games aren't fun. Most of them fail. And so that's a huge challenge. Now, let's say they keep the old gameplay. Well, then they're keeping gameplay that the market, that players rejected. If they change the gameplay, then they are orphaning the old cards and essentially dismantling the last shred of a TCG network that Metazoo had left. So that's a really big problem. And neither solution is great. Either trying to come up with a new rule set that will actually be fun this time and will drive players, or telling everybody who still has their old cards and maybe is excited for it to come back that, hey, those cards are no longer usable. That's going to burn some people too. So that's the first really big problem that I see. The second is, how do you get game stores back on board? Because game stores themselves are small mini networks in a TCG ecosystem. Game stores have their players, they have their owners, they have their own local inventory, they have their events, they have their culture, they have all kinds of things that work together to make a game store work better or worse. And a lot of game store owners, they may give a game a chance, but if the game doesn't take off at the store, if events don't get enough participants to make, then they will give up on the game, because the game store can't keep putting money into new product every month for various games that are not making them money back through sales, through events, through bringing people in to jam games so that they buy meat sticks out of the vending machine. And so there were a lot of game stores that were burnt. They were burnt by Metazoo not being a fun game. They were burnt by the bankruptcy. They were burnt by overprinting a product that the original Metazoo did. They were burnt by being stuck with product when the original Metazoo went bankrupt. And so it's going to be difficult to convince a lot of those stores to give the new Metazoo a second chance, especially when all the players who are relied on to bring money into the store are facing that first problem of either changing the rule set and orphaning all the old cards, or keeping an unfun rule set and allowing people's old cards to still be relevant. It's going to make it very difficult on stores. I'm not going to get into this. I'm not going to be buying it. You know, I'm very happy to have been the minority voice back in January saying, I don't think One Piece is good to be buying. And it turns out in retrospect, One Piece was at its peak back in January, and most of the boxes have come down considerably since then. For me and my conservative investment style, a game needs to prove itself first. It needs to prove that it can bring in players, that it can get stores on board, that it has distribution and print runs under control, that it has world-level competition, worldwide competition, because competition is a big thing that drives the game in the long term. You need all those elements of the ecosystem to create a successful TCG. And it's not so much that I'm skeptical that Charlie and his team can make that happen. It's that they need to prove it first to me. And I'm just some random guy on the internet, but I'm the only guy who controls my dollars. And until it's proven out, my dollars won't go for it. I think there's another issue. One last thing I'd like to talk about. Charlie is definitely a smart guy watching the interview, and it's definitely interesting seeing the way he thinks. There is one thing I think he got wrong, though, and it'll kind of underscore some of the other issues. The one thing I think he was wrong about is near the end of the interview, he was talking about how excited he was about the remaining Metazoo community and how there are still people making videos about Metazoo and there's still this community on YouTube around it. And I disagree there. You know, the two biggest channels for Metazoo prior to the bankruptcy were Argos Anon and Rudy. And Argos Anon had started selling off his grails, unloading his collection, and he hasn't been seen for 8 months. So he was no longer creating content. Rudy privatized and or deleted all of his Metazoo videos to make it appear he was never involved with it at all. Yes, even the great old video of Mike Waddell coming to Rudy's house for an interview. But if you looked on Alpha Investments today, you would think Rudy never even heard of the game. So the two biggest YouTube channels for Metazoo content basically either in a way no longer exist or no longer exist in the way they did before. And during the whole 10-month period from probably January to November, Nick's Strength and Pokemon was really the only channel making Metazoo content on YouTube. And so I think it shows that even the biggest fans, the biggest, whatever you want to call them, fans, players, collectors, pumpers, whatever you desire to call them, even they went away after the bankruptcy and so far haven't come back. And I think that's a big problem. I think that there's going to be an incredible uphill battle to get this going. Now, Charlie, definitely from the interview, he loves the cryptid theming. He thinks that can work out. I think it's cool. I think it's kind of novel. I mean, I'm interested to see what they do. I hope they can make a new rule set that will be fun to players and that they can make a lot fewer of the mistakes that the first Metazoo made. Specifically, Charlie said they would not be selling direct to customers, which is great. And he definitely understood you have to use the existing network of game stores and distributors because they provide value. They bring customers to your game. So he definitely understands those things. That's good to see. They have a lot of mountains to climb. And maybe in the future, they will be investable. But for now, I would stay away. They have a lot of mountains to climb and a lot of things to prove before they're out of the woods. Let me know what you think, guys. I'm interested to hear what you think, and it's definitely worthwhile to go back on Nick's Strength and Pokemon and watch that Charlie Herlocker interview. It was very interesting, and leave your comments down below. Thanks to everyone who makes this content possible, especially my very generous supporters on Patreon. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, and join me on Final Trade.